All right, so we're going to talk today about how to use banks to build your wealth. Listen, you've seen a lot of wealthy people in America and other parts of the world building, growing their wealth. You hear a lot of conversations online of you should do this and you should do that. Here's what I got to tell you. I've been in the game for 25 years helping wealthy families and high income, multiple millions of dollars a year earners with strategy to really help them build wealth. We've got a great guest on the show today, Chris Molina. He's got a brokerage company, helps families all over America. He helps them not only on the commercial side, but also on the residential side. So we're going to talk about how to really use banks effectively. Sometimes people talk about the idea of big banks and what they do. You know, big banks can sometimes be, I hate to say it, a detriment to helping you build your wealth. So how do you know what you should really do? And oh, by the way, the big, beautiful bill has passed. You're hearing a lot about it, but there's a lot of things that are real qualified business income deductions, depreciation factors, a lot of different things that have changed here. So we want to talk about how can you as an entrepreneur, aspiring an entrepreneur, maybe a very wealthy business owner, use some of these deductions and things to your benefit. Here's what we know. You work hard. You spend a lot of time to build what you have. We want to maximize a couple things, not only your wealth creation, your tax-free income, but also the ability to leverage capital so you can grow your legacy and not just the government and banks grow their own. How do you do it well? Chris is joining us here today. Chris, first off, thanks so much for joining us. He's a father. He's got kids. He's been through the ringer in several different ways. He's got his own company. And, one of the things that I've appreciated, Chris, about you over the years is if there's one thing over the years of connecting with you, and by the way, Chris has helped me personally in some different capacities as well, so I can vouch for that. But I'll tell you this, you're a hard worker. What is it in you? I just want to start there because all this other stuff about the idea of maximizing things, what spurs you to kind of just say, I'm going to go get it in life? What is it?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. That is an excellent question. So my mom escaped communism in Poland, came here when she was 18 with just $10. My dad is from Honduras and came here when he was an adult. And I love my parents to death, but they never bought real estate. And I would see my friends in Connecticut growing up, and the wealthiest friends that I had, I would ask their parents, hey, how did you get to where you are? And the answer always had something to do with real estate. So I was bit by the bug at a very young age and just very curious about finding out how do you actually build wealth with debt and real estate?
Yeah, it's important. We're going to start in the beginning and talk about the idea of using debt in the wrong way, right? Misusing debt. Let me say it that way. So I think a lot of times what happens is, and this is so important, so we want to talk about misusing it. We want to talk about strategies. We want to talk about the bill. We want to talk about some things that people can apply. But Chris, I want to start out with misusing debt because I believe what happens, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I believe what happens is a lot of times people are in a place where they misuse debt by purchasing things that don't appreciate. They're buying liabilities. They're buying cars. They're buying watches. I've talked about this on other shows, and they're buying things that kind of let the world know that they're successful when the reality of it is they're not. Now, it's one thing I want to tell you. It's one thing to use things where you're buying maybe a vehicle or you're traveling a certain way and you're doing it as a marketing tool for your business. That's one thing. But if you're doing it in a way where you're just trying to show the world that you're successful, I think that's a misuse of debt in a lot of ways because maybe you don't have any sustainable foundation as far as your income. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. By the way, just to give you some context, I work with over 276 lenders. I've been doing this for almost a decade. I've seen thousands of loan applications, and it is statistically proven that the average homeowner in America has a net worth over $300,000. The average renter has a net worth of only $8,000.
Wow.
So not using debt at all is probably the biggest problem there. And the number one reason statistically why people don't buy a home is because of the myth. They think they need 20% down, when in reality, there's down payment assistance. You can do 3% down, you can do 3.5% down and have a really, really low interest rate as well.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so before we jump into some of the different things with the big, beautiful bill, let's talk about the idea of where we are economically today. What are your thoughts as far as, interest rates? You hear Trump talking about Powell and kind of getting rid of him or not or whatever. What do you see potentially? And obviously there is no crystal ball, but what are your thoughts as far as the end of 2025, at least as far as interest rates and those types of things are concerned?
Absolutely. So every single year I've been in the business, there's been somebody telling my clients that the market's going to crash, that real estate's going to crash. What people need to know is that in 2010, the Dodd-Frank Act was passed, and that made lending very, very safe. So mortgage default rates...
What do you mean by that?
Mortgage default rates are at an all-time low. You used to have something called ninja loans, no income, no asset, no documentation. You could just say you make $1 million a year, no down payment, no credit, and get $1 million penthouse in Manhattan. That became illegal in 2010. So after that, people had to have...
So the ninjas went away. Chris, they were done.
Yeah, it went away. It went back to the samurai ages.
Yeah, exactly. They're out.
So ever since then, lending became safe, and you could actually see a correlation with mortgage delinquencies declining and declining and declining.
Which makes sense. Now you're actually qualifying people before they get the loan.
Look at the foreclosure market. It used to be 1 out of 50. Now it's 1 out of 5,000.
Yeah. Wow.
So real estate is a lot safer than people.
1 out of 50. Now it's 1 out of 5. That's a big jump.
Huge jump.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's actually broken my heart to see the people that listened to the advice of the doomsday person saying the market's going to crash, who didn't build any wealth. And now they're trying to buy a home, and it 2 times, 3 times more in value versus the person that I worked with my first year in the business who has over $600,000 in equity in their property, and their life is completely night and day.
Wow. So let's talk about this. Somebody's saying, I'm waiting for interest rates to drop. I'd like to buy a house. I'd like to do that, but I don't want to wait for interest rates to drop. And what do you say to that person?
First business book I ever read was The Art of the Deal. And in there, Trump talks about his strategy, how he built wealth in real estate was buying when rates were high because there wasn't as much demand for those properties, and then simply refinancing when rates come down. And if billionaires can do it, if it works for them, it can work for the average person as well.
Well, Chris, it worked for them because they weren't always billionaires. So that's the first thing you need to understand. Like, people that are actually sharing philosophy of what they do weren't always billionaires. They got to be billionaires, and they got to be very, very wealthy because of the things and strategies that they've done. And that's one of the things that I talked about is over the last 25 plus years, when we look at families or helping families, even on my own personal journey, a lot of ways, thinking about how can we maximize what we're doing. And it's like anything else. It's always a good time to buy great real estate as long as you get it at the right price. You don't want to be in a place where anytime you overpay, but also if the competition is lower, which is what you're saying there, and as rates are higher and people have a fear of false evidence appearing real, right? When people are in a place where there's fear, they're in a place where they don't make decisions, which causes less consumers to come in the market, which causes less demand, which causes you to have more opportunity to buy a price that you like. If the rates come down, you can always refi.
And guess what? Jerome Powell's time expires in May 2026. So whoever takes his place, whether it's Bessent or someone else, they're going to have a declaration to lower rates. And Trump's already stated he wants them in the 5s.
Yeah. And that's just the way it is. Yeah, I love that. So this is really a great time to buy now, even if rates aren't where you want them to be. All right,
if I share one more mistake
jump into it.
For the business owners out there, the higher income individuals, the biggest mistake that I see those individuals making in real estate is trying to amend the taxes to pay more in taxes to qualify for a full documentation conventional loan when they could go with a bank statement loan. They don't have to pay any more in taxes. They could literally have negative income on the tax.
So let's dive into that. What is the real difference when somebody's looking at that?
Maybe 0.5% rate.
Wow. Because that's the fear. People are like, well, yeah, but if I do that, then the rate's going to be, right?
Yep.
Absorbently high, but it's not.
No, and then you get the interest deduction as well.
Okay, so who is that, in your opinion, going to absolutely apply to?
Any business owner out there.
Love it. That's easy.
or 1099.
Yeah. So business owner 1099, and you're in a place where a lot of these, this is what I kind of talked about in the beginning. A lot of these big, and this is so important. This is really important in relation to building your wealth. Okay. Because one of the things, and Chris, you know this, and so do I, one of the things that families will do as a way to catapult their own wealth creation, it's the old adage of using other people's money. It's what people that have used banks well do. And the challenges are sometimes with a lot of big banks, because they're so big, it's so convoluted, it can be challenging to kind of get the monies necessary to grow your wealth in the way that you want to grow it.
You hit on a massive point
right?
That's not spoken about enough. The big banks out there, I'm talking Wells Fargo, B of A, Chase, the top 5, they actually have investor overlays and restrictions from the housing market crash that the government imposed on them that other financial institutions don't have.
Well, that's amazing. And not only that, when you look at a lot of the big banks, and I won't throw names out there on the wealth side, but what I'll tell you is this. A lot of times on the wealth side, Chris, they'll keep people invested at a bank because of a teaser rate. We'll give you a 50 basis points lower rate or something like that. You keep the wealth there and you keep your investments there, and we'll give you a better rate. And when you actually look at the flow through, okay, and that's one of the things that we talked about with families and some of the other companies that I have, obviously, that are helping families with wealth, is like, what's happening actually with your wealth? What's the return on your investments? So yeah, you might get a little bit of a teaser rate, but what is actually happening with your investments? And what you're saying, what I hear you saying is there's actually options where you can take advantage of things outside of, we'll call it the big system.
Yes.
That are actually more advantageous to business owners in general.
Exactly. And even for the business owners that maybe don't even deposit their cash into a bank account, there's also a CPA letter route as well, a P&L only program to go. There's asset depletion as well. So if you have a bunch of money sitting in a bank account and you don't have any income coming in. For example, in Florida, you have a lot of retirees that maybe make $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month in Social Security, but they have $1.5 million in the bank. They won't qualify at a traditional bank, but they will qualify with me.
Wow. Okay. So here, let's cap that off and move to the next thought in this way. A lot of people don't know what they want because they don't know what's available.
Yep.
So it's a beautiful thing. All right. So here we go. Let's jump into strategic mortgage structuring, why low interest debt can be powerful. These are some of the talking points here. Let's talk about some of that from your perspective.
Yeah. So low interest debt can be powerful, but also higher interest debt can be powerful if it's the right property. For example, if you're buying a distressed asset and you have an off-market opportunity.
That's a great point. A lot of people don't think about that. They think, I'll wait until, in other words, how many people would you say, Chris, actually allow the interest rate, what the interest rates currently are, to be the driver of what they buy?
I would say maybe 60%.
Yeah. So the majority.
Yeah.
Right. And yet, what we should be looking at is the actual asset. Talk about that, the stressed asset, and kind of maximizing that for those.
First of all, it's all about location because we are so blessed to live in South Florida where you have so many people moving here from higher tax states. And Florida is a very landlord-friendly state as well. And so I believe that, especially with what's
true. I mean, listen, in California, you got squatters' rights and all this other stuff. We don't have that here.
Communist mayor going into Manhattan right now, right? Or New York right now. So you're going to have even more people as the laws and taxes change over there. They're going to increase taxes on people. You're going to have even more New Yorkers come down here. So the net migration, what a lot of people don't know, the net migration from 2010 to 2019 before COVID in Palm Beach County alone exceeded the entire state of California.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's huge.
When you think about that,
yep.
That's crazy. And so we're talking about the big, beautiful bill. This is something that Trump claimed. He named it as this. We're going to get it passed. He gets it passed. It's like Thanksgiving dinner for a lot of people that are out there. I mean, it's like you get the turkey, it's sliced up nice, the gravy's there, just like mom used to make. Mashed potatoes, love mashed potatoes, by the way. And the stuffing and all the fixings. It's really, there's a lot of opportunity here. 100% depreciation is what a lot of people are talking about. I could unpack it. I'm going to let you unpack it. You're here. So let's talk about this. 100% depreciation. What does that look like? What's the benefit? Why does it matter? Who should be paying attention to this?
Absolutely. So 100% bonus depreciation, that is amazing for any real estate investor. Whether you bought a short-term rental or a long-term rental, if you bought a property, it used to be where you had to extend your depreciation out 5 years. Now you take all that depreciation and use it as a deduction year one. So let's say you bought $1 million property, right? They're going to exclude the land value. Let's say that's $250,000. They're going to take that $750,000 plus any repairs you do to the property, any appliances, anything you do to the property. And they're going to take that entire quantity. Then you get hit with your marginal tax rate on top of that. So let's say $750,000, 37% of that, that's going to be your deduction on your income.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful thing. So who should be taking advantage of this, in your opinion?
I would definitely say higher income earners, anyone earning over $100,000 a year should definitely take advantage of this.
It's going to wipe out a lot of taxes. What's the process? So let's talk about this practically, because we always want to kind of give some practical steps. So Chris, somebody's like, hey, I'm making $100,000 a year, I'm making $200,000 a year, I'm making $1 million a year. And definitely they should be, right? People that are making millions of dollars a year. Obviously, a lot of the folks that we work with on the other side are already taking advantage of this stuff in different capacities. They're prepared and ready for it. But somebody wants to step in the game. They're making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year or more. They want to say, I want to maximize this. I want to grow my wealth. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Let's paint a picture.
I'll give you a great example. I have a client right now who he's a bond trader. He's making $200,000 a year, but from his Airbnb property, his short-term rental, he's making $150,000 in revenue. So with the qualified business income deduction, that's now back as well. On that 150, let's say after expenses, he's left with 120. He's going to get a 20% deduction off the net profit.
It's powerful. So for those that don't know what you just said, say it simply. 7th grade math.
7th grade math. Basically, if you own a rental property, you get an additional 20% deduction off your net profit.
So you own a rental property, and let's create a real picture. That rental property is worth $1 million. I'm Airbnb-ing it. I'm making income from it. In your scenario, I'm making $150,000 a year on that $1 million rental property. That's generating, basically, it's a 15% a year return, right? On the $1 million property. I'm just using numbers here generally, but just as an example, okay? Because it's probably pretty close to the truth. So now we're in a place where that happens. Now what do I get to do as far as with the deduction that applies to me? How?
So you're going to take your gross revenue, which is that 150. You're going to subtract your expenses from that. So let's say you're left with that 120. You take that 120 and then you get a 20% deduction off of that.
Right. So now think about this, guys. So you're in a place where you made $150,000 a year and you have expenses that come off of it, which is $30,000 a year. Your income's 120, and now you take another 20% off of that. So really, you're only paying taxes on a number that's around what, $85,000, something like that. So you made 150. You take your expenses off. You pay taxes on a significantly lower amount. What I'm saying is this is something that you need to be taking advantage of. Here's the challenge, and Chris, I've seen this over the years. Obviously, you know, in one of our companies, we have a full soup to nut tax division. One of the guys on our team literally teaches 3,000 CPAs in America on what to do when taxes come. So there's a white paper letter that was written out on this, basically saying, here's what happens, here's what you should be doing, here's what you should be paying attention to. I've found over the years that a lot of times when people are in a place where they have strategic relationships, CPAs, wealth planners, etc., even brokers, they're in a place where they're kind of just minimally doing the ideas. Why? Because a lot of times it's the client, it's the consumer, it's the business owner that's bringing ideas to the table instead of the reverse. Have you noticed that?
Definitely.
So what should someone do right now if they're in a place, in your opinion, where they're saying, you know what, I don't know how to take advantage of all this stuff. What do they need to be thinking about?
I would say definitely work with someone that sees themselves not just as a mortgage broker, but as a loan advisor. And at my company, Molina Mortgage Advisors, I do pride myself on that aspect. Like, I genuinely shop the market for my clients, over 276 banks, to get them the best rate, but then also to put together different simulations and analyses for them. That way they can actually see how they're going to build wealth doing this. And so they're also aware of what the tax implications could be and where they can save money in that regard.
Yeah, I think this is so important. I call it money's falling through the cracks, right? It's the idea of like, you're in a place where you go out, you work hard, you're making money, but you got money's falling through the cracks. Why? Because you're the one, maybe you read an article, you watch something on TV, you're doing something yourself, or you're then going and trying to find a source just to loan you some money to kind of take advantage instead of really having a trusted source that understands how this all works and comes together well. Then they can give you strategy on minimizing and maximizing. The other thing I would say is, listen, there's so much information, even this that you're watching now, online, that you see online, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram or whatever it is. And the challenge, Chris, is a lot of the folks that are sharing information haven't really lived in the space for a long time. They haven't really provided strategy for a long time. They haven't really vetted it out. You know, there's a name out there a lot of people know about, Dave Ramsey. I think Dave shares a lot of great things. But I think there's a lot of things that Dave shares that I think are detrimental to actually helping families build wealth. You know, he talks about the borrower is slave to the lender. Well, that's true if you're not good at making decisions and you don't mathematically think about, in other words, you're misusing debt, which is what we talked about in the beginning. But I think actually the borrower can become the wealth master to the lender at some point in time, you know, the tail wagging the dog, so to speak. Why? Because they're using debt to their advantage. And every wealthy family that has not inherited wealth, typically the thread that you see with wealthy families, Chris, I'd love your thoughts on this, is they have learned to master and use debt to their advantage, right? You own real estate, you own property. What's a great way to build more wealth? Well, you take equity out of the property that you own, and when you take the equity out, you get income from that. It's tax-free. Then you take that money to buy more. Now, you have to make sure that you have a pattern and a plan. And I want to caution those of you that are watching this and listening to this, get some type of sustainable income initially, whatever that is, $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, $1 million a year. A lot of the families we're working with in our tax division are making $2 to $3 million a year. They got sustainable income. They're ready to really start to hit it out of the park and building their own wealth. The problem is, though, Chris, a lot of people spend time building their income and they don't press pause when they get to a certain level to really then build their wealth.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
100%.
So what are your thoughts? What have you seen over the years of how people can actually take some of these steps? Say, what should you be doing? Because you got to have a few key players in your world to really help you do it well. You can't do everything by yourself. Who are those players and what does that look like in your opinion?
So I do think that the 100% bonus depreciation is going to stimulate the people who are maybe on the fence, not investing in real estate yet. But also, if people understand that debt service coverage ratio loans are out there where you can qualify for a $2 million, $4 million, $5 million asset without qualifying based on your income. Let's say you do write off a lot of your expenses and you don't.
So you're talking about a business owner that writes a lot of income off and they write a lot of expenses off. And on paper, when they do their taxes, maybe they make $1 million a year, but they're actually only paying taxes on $200,000. Yeah. That's what you're talking about.
You can still buy a $5 million, $10 million investment property, multifamily, or apartment building with 20% down. It's all about debt service coverage ratio. And what that really means is, does the rent cover the mortgage payment when the appraiser goes out there and he looks at what the average rentals are going for in the area?
That's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Because a lot of times people are used to being with larger banks, right? And so they're in a place where the bank says, okay, well, gosh, you make this, but your net take home is only X, a much lower number, right? And so they look at that number and they're like, well, I don't know that you can satisfy this particular loan, which causes them to press pause potentially on building their own wealth.
They think they don't qualify. I was literally talking to a financial advisor the other day because it was kind of the representative for the seller of an investment property. And he had no idea what a DSCR loan was. He's been a financial advisor for 30 years. By the end of the call,
why do you think that is? Why do you think, because I see this so often, and this is so important for you to at home as you're listening to this, like there's so many people out there giving a lot of information about a lot of stuff, and yet their level of knowledge on issues are surface level. Why do you think there's so many professionals, Chris, that are out there in the marketplace, in America, I'll talk about specifically, that really are service level advisors in all different types of space, whether it's wealth, brokers, CPAs, attorneys? They know so much. They know enough to sound smart to the uneducated public, so to speak, in a lot of ways, but they don't really know how to take advantage of things that really matter for people. Listen, we're on my financial firms, we're 100% referral because of the great service and business that we brought to people and a lot of families that we serve. But I see it so often where people are surface deep. Why do you think that is?
I will take some responsibility for the mortgage broker community. I don't think we put enough content educationally out there for the average person. But then for that financial advisor, maybe he hasn't asked the right questions.
So just not willing to go deeper. I think it's laziness. I think you're being kind. I think it's laziness. And so the question that you got to ask yourself is, when you work with someone as a professional, are they willing to do what's necessary and put the work in to really help you get the education and information that you need to make a good decision so you can build your wealth? And unfortunately, most people, Chris, are listening to WIIFM. What's in it for me? And at the end of the day, when you start to step back in life, this is a little sales principle, life principle that I want to challenge you to get. When you step back in life and you turn off the station, WIIFM, what's in it for me? And you turn that station off and you turn on the station of how can I add value to other people? And when you add value to other people, Zig said it for years and years and years and years. When you help enough other people get what they want in life, you will have the opportunity to get what you want. So the question is, who are you working with? What is the value of information that they're bringing to you? And how is it really helping you build your wealth? Not just selling you a product, but helping you build your wealth. We say it a lot of times at the other firms that I have. We don't sell products. We help people build plans. All right, I want to land the plane on this show, Chris, with a few thoughts, and I want you to be able to share the last couple. What are some big takeaways that you would say, or anything that we missed that you feel like you want to share for those that are listening? As you see people, we've talked about a bonus depreciation. We've talked about taking advantage of income deductions. We've talked about the idea of the fact that, there's different ways to qualify for loans if you're a business owner. And so you can get and buy opportunities and properties maybe that you didn't ordinarily think you could. What are some other final closing thoughts, actually, maybe that folks should be thinking about and doing, leaving the show? Instead of just walking away and saying, oh, that's good information, I appreciate you sharing that. What should they practically do, in your opinion?
Definitely two things. So the first thing would be, don't max out your debt to income ratio. That's the number one mistake I do see people making, is people living above their means.
So let's create a scenario. It sounds good to people listening, but what does it actually practically mean? Somebody's making, let's just do $1 million. Now, I know everybody out there is not making $1 million a year. Let's just say that they are making $1 million a year, debt to income ratio, go.
So max DTI, you're looking at 45%, 50. That means on $1 million, you can be qualified up to, let's say, a $50,000 mortgage payment. Would that be responsible?
Right. That's the question.
Correct.
Right. That's the question. Okay. So that's the first thing. Don't overdo that. So that way, when the challenges in life occur and the markets go up and the markets go down, and they will, you are ready. And by the way, I think that's a great point, because listen, I can't tell you how many businesses, now I'm a little older than Chris, but I can't tell you how many businesses that I literally watched in 2008 go out of business. Not during COVID when the government caused them to completely shut down. I'm talking about, Chris, the idea of when the markets tanked 1 year. Now think about this for a minute. That drop in 2008, if you remember that, right? That drop in 2008, the majority of the drop took about 8 to 9 months to happen. And yet it took most people 4 to 5 years to recover from that drop. So just think about this for a minute. Imagine being in business for 10 or 15 years and one big negative year in the market takes you out. Now, a lot of people during that time and after that time said, I went out of business because the market dropped. I went out of business because the market dropped. Well, I would actually say I disagree with that. I think you went out of business because you did not plan for negative markets. They're going to happen. They're going to come. The question is, are you planning for them? And I think that's what you're saying here, Chris, as far as debt to income ratio. Prepare in advance for challenges in your life to occur. Take advantages of some of the things that you can by using all the tools that are available.
100%, 1,000% there, Michael. And I think I'll land the plane with this, okay? Your first home does not have to be your forever home. And people who really build wealth in real estate, they understand that principle and they simply build equity in that property. Then they sell it. If you live in it for 2 or more years, the capital gains taxes that you have to pay is dramatically reduced up to your first $500,000 in net profit. All right. And right now, with the beautiful big bill that was just passed, you have the SALT deduction as well. So that's the state and local taxes. And what happened is the cap increased from $10,000 to $40,000. And I'll give you an example. Me and my wife, right? We're not wealthy yet, right? I do want to be wealthy in the future, right? However, I'm 27 years old and my property taxes when I bought the property was $8,000. Now it's, $14,000. And so I wouldn't have previously been able to write off any more than $10,000. And there's so many average Americans out there who saw their property taxes go from $8,000 to $20,000, especially in the high tax states. So this is going to help the average American dramatically. And if they want to get any more information, I do make videos quite often. They can follow me on Instagram at chris.mortgages. Mortgage has a silent T. I didn't know that when I was 18. And they can call me anytime, 561-801-5800.
I love it. Chris, first off, thanks for taking a minute and sharing some thoughts to folks out there. You've done a great job. You've been in the space for 10 years. Glad you came on.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Listen, guys, I wanted to have Chris on for a couple reasons. One, he's been in business 10 years. To me, that's a great mark of saying, here's somebody that's been in the space long enough to really understand what they're doing, number one. Number two, he is a researcher and a student of the game. And number three, the main reason I wanted to have him on is I know a lot of you that are watching this or listening to this are probably younger. And you're asking, like, how can I be successful myself? So I thought, why not have somebody that's younger on with an actual true success story to share what he's doing, owning his own company, doing his own thing, running hard, understanding that he has to be a student of the game. Remember, when you add more value and you solve bigger problems, you make more money. So if you're frustrated at the place of where you are, and by the way, life's not all about money. It's a library card. It gives you access. I'm a big believer that we should operate on purpose, that we should be paying attention to the plan that God has for our lives, for your life. There is a plan. How do I know that? Well, you're the only one with the fingerprint that you have. It's unique to you. No one has ever lived with the print. No one ever will live with the print. You're the only one with that print. So at the end of the day, you're unique. And when you really focus, slow down from the noise of the world and say, what gifts and abilities has God directly given me? It'll empower you to run after them. But one of the things I love about Chris's story is he's been through challenges. Champions are not made on feather beds. He's been through challenges. And what happens is you want to get around. I want to get around. He's 27. I'm 47. I got 20 years of life, real business experience on him. However, I get fueled when I'm around people who are in a place where they want to go tear it out of the park, if you will, as well. Why? Because we know that the best thing that we can do, one of the reasons that I do this show, is share content, share information, share ideas back to those of you that are coming along the way to help you grow and develop as well. And so I said, why not have someone on the show that's younger, under 30, doing well? He's very successful. He says he's not wealthy. He's very successful on the scope of how Americans kind of stack up, if you will. But I will tell you this, he's done it on the backs of hard work. He's done it on the backs of making sure that his customer service is top notch. He's done it on the backs of not being willing to just drink the Kool-Aid that, hey, this is the way we've always done it. That's the way we're always going to do it. He's looking for ways opportunistically to add more value to people. So one great example of helping you build your wealth so you can get the loans to buy real estate and do the things that you do is get your income up. Work 2 jobs, work 3 jobs, do whatever's necessary. Get your income up. And remember, one of the great ways to get your income up, you've heard me talk about it before, is 2 ways. Number 1, do not trade your time for money. Solve problems for money. And number 2, look to solve bigger problems. The bigger problems you solve, the greater problems you solve for folks, the more money you will make. Think about that, and then you go down the path of saying, I'm going to talk to Chris. Now, if you're out there and you got lots of wealth, you want to continue to grow, talk to him. He's a great guy. He's going to help you. But what I will tell you is take advantage of some of the things that are happening from the big, beautiful bill. Don't allow these things to occur, and just kind of allow yourself to be in a place where you're going down the river in 2, 3, 4 years from now. You're like, gosh, I wish I would have taken advantage of that. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Zig Ziglar said it. I believe it. I've adopted it. And that's this. Someday in life, you will look back, I will look back, and you'll either say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had. Those are the only 2 options. At 47 years old right now for me as I sit in this chair, July 2025, 20 years from now, Lord willing, when I'm almost 60 or 67 years old, I will look back and either say, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had. You will either look back in life saying, I'm glad I did, or I wish I had. What does that mean? What that means is take action now to improve your tomorrow and do it today. Be blessed. Have fun. Share this with someone that needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channels. Dial in. Be a student. Learn. And then apply. Talk to you soon.